Hello and welcome to the Nursing and the Arts podcast. I'm your host, Susan J. Farese, MSN RN, SJF Communications. Here we will listen to stories from nurses that use the creative arts in their practice or in their personal lives. So just sit back, relax, and enjoy the show. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Nursing and the Arts podcast. I am your host, Susan J. Farese, MSN RN, and today I am so thrilled to see the mountains of New Mexico here with Nurse Keith Carlson. So nice to have you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you. I wish those were the mountains of New Mexico behind me. It's actually a Japanese block print, but we'll pretend it's New Mexico.
We'll pretend. How about some hot air balloons, right? Isn't that what they're famous for there? I
That's
love
one thing
that.
we do here. That's true.
Well, we have them in San Diego as well. And basically right in our neighborhood, I could look up and see 4 or 5 at a time. We love nature together, don't we?
We do.
Is that one of your things? Yeah.
Yeah, we were just traveling. My wife and I were just on our honeymoon, and we were in Cyprus and Greece and Turkey, and it was quite beautiful everywhere we went, pretty much, I have to say.
Were the colors of Greece the way that you see them in these photos? I've never been to Greece, but they're just gorgeous. A lot of white and blues, is it? And some
Yeah,
reds.
there's certain type of architecture called Cycladian architecture. So you have those white buildings against the blue sky and the ocean. So you
Mm,
find that a lot. It's not all the homes, but a lot of the buildings on certain islands have that particular style, and it's quite beautiful.
that's great. That's great.
Yeah,
Well, I hope you're all friendly after 3 weeks together on a honeymoon. That's a
we are.
long honeymoon.
Yeah,
So
it was
congratulations.
kind of an adventurous honeymoon too.
And why? Why adventurous?
Well, three countries. Um, you know, Cyprus is its own thing. It's way out in the Eastern Mediterranean, right across from Lebanon, actually.
Mm,
And we had to drive on the left side of the road. So that was pretty challenging. Um, yeah, just the adventure of being going to three different countries, and it's not like we just like went to Disney World for a week or, spent 3 weeks on one island. We did
right.
quite a bit of traveling, so it was a lot of transition, and so there was a lot of adventure involved.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Great. Great. Well, why we have you here, first of all, you are a nurse coach, a nurse podcast or a podcaster for many years now, a writer, a consultant, a keynote speaker. What don't you do, Nurse Keith? What don't
There's
you do? What would you like to do in the future if you're not doing all of these things? What's one
one
thing?
one of the things I walked away from our trip, from our honeymoon, was my wife said to me, we stayed a couple times in these little boutique hotels, a couple in Turkey, a couple in Greece, and she was like, "You'd be really good at this." And I
Ah,
thought, I really think I would be really good at it. So
good at staying or good at owning?
owning,
Owning
like
like an inn. That's
running a
cool.
sweet little boutique hotel would be really awesome.
That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
hmm
So are you venturing out looking at different properties yet, or are we going to take a couple months?
I wish
See,
I had the financial wherewithal to do that here in Santa Fe, but it would be a heavy lift here
it
in
would
New
be.
Mexico. So
Okay, I get
maybe
that.
maybe somewhere else.
So,
Yeah.
all kidding aside, so you are a BSN RN NC-BC. So is that a nurse coach board certified for the
Yeah,
NCBC? Yeah,
that's right.
there's so
That's
much
what that
alphabet
is.
soup. Absolutely. Where did
hmm
you get your BSN?
University of Massachusetts at Amherst.
At Amherst. Okay. And
Yeah.
weren't you from Central Jersey? Because I'm from New Jersey originally. Aren't we Jersey twins here?
I was born in Perth Amboy, New Jersey.
Okay.
Grew up in Central Jersey, and then actually went to art school in Philadelphia.
Uh-huh.
And
Okay.
dropped out of art school and went to nursing school in Massachusetts quite a few years later.
So do you believe that nursing is an art and a science with all of your art background from the
Yeah, yeah,
beginning?
I've written and spoken about the art of nursing. Yeah, I do believe
Hmm.
obviously nursing is science-based, right?
Right.
But I do believe there's an artful side of it on various levels. Yeah.
Tell me some of them.
Well,
Tell us.
I feel like the relational aspect of nursing
Hmm.
is artful. You know, of course, there's science of psychology and behavior, right, and relationships and those sorts of things. There's plenty of science behind that.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Yeah, of course. But I feel like the connectivity and the
Yeah.
relationalness of nursing is definitely artful. And and I feel like there's an artfulness to just sort of like being a nurse, like this just the way of being a
Absolutely.
nurse
Being.
can be quite artful, depending on
Mhm.
where you are, what the context is, the kind of work you do, and the way that you approach it, and maybe even the kinds of clients or patients that you serve.
Absolutely. There's knowing, there's a demeanor, there's an intuition. All of these things are artful as well.
Mm-hmm.
I completely believe in the art of nursing. And you know,
Mm-hmm.
my saying from the book, when it's all said and done, there's no profession as diverse as the art and the science of being a nurse. And I
Mm-hmm.
truly believe that. And that is why I started this podcast, Nursing and the Arts, so that we can bring nurses on that I know value their intuition and just the art of nursing. Just there is an art. There's something special about a connection between a nurse and a patient, whether they're on the wellness continuum or in tragedy or grief. There's just some kind of a connection, whether it's, communication, reflective technique, touch, whatever the senses. So I really value you. I know that you're the type of nurse that I would want taking care of me um,
Thank you.
after many, many years in this business here. Tell me about your blogging too. How long have you had that, and what has
Yeah,
that done for
digital
you?
doorway. Yeah. Um, I launched that blog in January of 2005. And at that time, there were, gosh, blogging was pretty new at the time,
Right.
relatively new,
Mhm.
especially in nursing and medicine. And at the time, I think there was one other nursing blog,
Oh,
maybe two.
wow.
Yeah. And I started it on a lark. Was sitting in front of the fire. My brother was visiting. I was at my house in Amherst, Massachusetts, and
Okay.
my brother said, "Hey Keith, you're a good writer. There's these new things called blogs. Why don't you start one?" And I was like, "Okay." So I started one that night, and it was that one. I didn't know what I was doing, and it took a number of months to coalesce into me writing about my work as a
Okay.
nurse. And um, that particular angle caught people's attention. So I realized
Mm,
that there was something there and I just continued. And to be super honest, I haven't been posting on that blog for the last year or so. So I think it's been retired. It's still there.
okay.
And so I've just sort of moved on from it.
Or
And
or
it's also
you've just changed
I
trajectory to
shifted.
the more of the podcast speaking in public and that kind of thing as well.
Yeah, but it was a
Yeah.
labor of love for a really, really long time.
And you were
Yeah.
a pioneer, a nurse blogger pioneer. So you should be proud of that. I mean,
Thank you.
uh, and it comes and goes. I mean, even with my blog on my website. It depends on if I have a client that's really interesting or a student that I've mentored. It's just a variety of things. And I have to have that whim about me because with SEO and everything, it takes time, patience, and skill to be able to even
Hmm.
put out a blog. So here we are with nursing and the arts. So you're a coach, you're a speaker, communication, you're a podcaster, again, communication, you're a blogger, communication. You
Hmm.
are a communicator.
Hmm.
Communication is a media art. There you go, nursing in the arts. And and we need people like you and hopefully me with this podcast as
Hmm.
we grow. You're number 11, by the way.
Oh, I'm honored.
And I
Nice number.
know that you and I just discussed that you are near your 500th podcast episode. Hello,
Hmm.
500. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's that the 500th episode is very timely. It's coming out December 20th, 2024, and it'll be the last episode of the year.
Okay.
And so I'll start 2025 at 501.
That's amazing.
And it is a moment. There's sort of a moment to pause and look back and reflect on
Sure.
what it means and what to do with it now. There's that question of what do I do with it now? You know.
I've heard that people, can repurpose and make blogs out of them too, or a book. Where is your
Mhm.
book? Have you had a book published yet?
I've had a couple books I self-published on Create Space on Amazon
Oh,
quite a few years ago. People ask me about a book all the time, and it just are like those were sort of instructional books for careers, and a, another type of book hasn't really coalesced yet.
hmm,
Yeah. And I
hmm,
write so much. I write for other people and other
right.
organizations that,
Hmm.
you know, writing a book is a whole nother animal, I guess you could say.
But where you live in Santa Fe would be a phenomenal place for a fictional story
That's
that has
true.
nothing to do with nursing, possibly, and nature. I see somewhere in your bio that you do value nature. Tell me
I
about that.
do.
Tell me
I
about that.
do. Well, um, nature was important as a child. My dad was very tuned into the natural world, and I think he had this certain sense of awe and
Mm.
childlike. Yeah,
Hmm.
he had sort of this childlike awe of the simple things. So I definitely inherited that from him. And then I lived in Western Massachusetts for many years, Amherst, Northampton area,
Mm.
which is very beautiful. Spent a lot of time outside with my son, and now living in New Mexico, nature is quite
Oh, sure, sure.
apparent here. Like you're sort of immersed in it all the time. The sky is really big here. The mountains are beautiful. The desert is beautiful. And, just traveling recently in Europe and, well,
Mm.
Turkey is actually Asia. Um, you know, it's all so beautiful. So yeah,
So
I'm
you
pretty,
appreciate nature
I'm
for sure. Yeah.
tuned into it, and my wife and I love living out in the country. We live at the end of a dirt road outside of Santa Fe, and we
Mm.
like the quiet, three, four cars go by a day maybe. And we like it that way.
That's really cool. I'm a
Yeah.
nature photographer, so I
Uh,
completely value nature. In fact, one of the newest creative arts I have is creating greeting cards that have
oh,
my
it's
nature
nice.
photography on it. And I was just at a book fair last weekend, and people were buying those cards left and right. And it's a lot of lagoons and landscapes, flowers, around the San Diego area. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's another form of expression. And I tell the people, you could either write a note because inside is a white area to write. They each come with an envelope, and you can frame them as well. They're 5x7s. So it created so many conversations with people about, oh, where was this snake that you have a photo of? Oh, I love that flower. Blah blah blah. I just enjoy the conversations I have with people about nature, as well as presenting it, and then using these nature photography as prompts in my haiku workshops.
Oh, that's
Yeah,
that's
so I
really
teach.
wonderful.
Yeah, I teach haiku in the library system in San Diego for several years now.
Oh, that's
So
lovely.
you know, I just see you doing something in New Mexico that's fiction based. That's not the technical, nonfiction nursing. Because I know there's something in you that's coming out that way. I know it.
Well,
I know
thank you. I appreciate that. I will tuck that in and
Yeah, yeah.
ponder that.
Now, what do you do for fun and for relaxation? Those
Hmm.
two things.
Um, my wife and I spend time outside.
Hmm.
We take our dog out quite a bit. We went for a really nice walk at the dog park the other day, and um, it's an interesting dog park. It used to be a landfill outside of the
Oh,
city,
uh-huh.
and it's, rolling hills and arroyos. It's quite beautiful.
Very
And
nice.
here in New Mexico, it's interesting. When you walk around, there's a lot of quartz crystal everywhere you go.
Oh,
So we were picking up beautiful stones yesterday to bring home. And we we like to travel around the area and check out just there's so many beautiful places to go. Um, my wife's actually a really talented astrologer
I was just
and
going to ask you about that. I've
yeah,
read
and
that. Yeah.
reader of the tarot, and she's a teacher. So we talk a lot about
Mm-hmm.
these things. And
Mm-hmm.
travel is something I love. We don't have the opportunity to travel as much as we would like to, but
Mm-hmm.
our recent honeymoon was really wonderful. And
Oh, sure.
that if I had a choice, that's what I would do for fun more than anything.
Oh,
Actually,
travel.
traveling is one of my great loves, actually.
That's really cool. Have you ever been burned out in
Oh,
nursing?
yes,
Can you
absolutely.
can you tell how, if in fact, any arts helped you, creative arts in some way, helped you
Um,
with that burnout, or was it a person, or how
yeah,
did you get out of that?
I would say that the the writing and blogging at the time was actually very, very helpful.
Mm, see.
And I used the burnout kind of as a vehicle, and I wrote about it, and I actually used it in some of my motivational talks and
Uh-huh.
on my podcast and some keynote addresses I did and a few little workshops I did. So
Hmm.
I tried to use the burnout as a vehicle for communicating what I did to kind of transform it, which was not
Right.
easy. It was pretty
Oh
hard.
no. Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But I did get through it.
Was that early in your nursing career?
Let's see. That was around 2007, 2008, and I became a nurse in 96. So no, that was 10, 12 years in.
Into it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Maybe 14, something like that.
What are the clinical areas that you've worked in, or nursing areas, management and such?
Um, I have never, ever, ever, ever worked in the hospital. So it's been 28
Interesting.
years and I've never worked even one shift in a hospital.
Okay.
People often feel like how could you possibly be a nurse and not having ever worked in the hospital? So I worked in federally qualified health centers, so community health centers,
Hmm.
in economically challenged areas in Massachusetts. I worked in home health, hospice. I've done a couple stints in public health. Um, I've been the chief nursing officer of a home health agency in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And currently, I have a part-time job and I
Hmm.
work in a travel medicine clinic. So when I tell people I do travel medicine, they're like, "Oh, you're a traveling nurse." And I'm like, "No, I work in a travel medicine clinic." So people come to see us when they're going to Africa and they
Get
need
your
a yellow
shots.
fever vaccine, yeah, or malaria
Right.
medication. So currently, that's what I do clinically is travel medicine, which is actually quite interesting.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Okay, when I was an army nurse, way back in the day, I was in charge of a huge health clinic, and many of the generals would come in and get their shots because they were traveling, and they needed smelling salts. They were not
Wow.
as brave as I thought they would be.
Mm-mm.
So it just brings me back to that traveling clinic kind of area of our clinic. But that's amazing that you haven't been in a hospital. And see, people value the hospital nurse situation, but you're right. And especially in this day and age, you don't need to start in med surge the way I had to when I'm an old one. Uh, but that was the
Well,
normal course, med surge and
well,
then ICU. But now people are starting in NICU and
yeah.
all over in nursing.
Well,
So
when I
that's great.
graduated with my associates, it was 1996, and
Okay.
doing the med surge thing was kind of de rigueur. That was like what people did.
Uh-huh.
And I announced that I was taking a job in a federally qualified health center, and people were totally aghast. And the
Mm.
message I got from my colleagues, my peers, and my professors at the time was, "You'll never have a viable nursing career."
Wow.
And I was like, Mm, you really one of the things of my life is usually when people tell me I can't do something, then it makes me even more want to do that thing.
Absolutely. Same here. Same here.
Yeah.
Just
So
challenge
that's what
me,
I did. I was
Very
like,
good.
just watch me. Yeah.
There you go. There
And
you
I've
go.
never been unemployed
Hmm.
for any period of those 28 years, except for a couple periods where I actually wanted to not work for a little while.
Great. With a
So I've
choice.
done
That's
okay.
great.
I've made it all
Uh-huh.
right.
That's great. That's great. Trying to think if there's anything we didn't touch on. What do you like to speak about with your keynote speaking? What are your topics?
Well, it really mostly depends on what the organization's asking for. Like
Mm,
in next month, I'm speaking for the at the conference of the Florida Organization of Nurse Leaders,
okay.
and they're in Daytona Beach, so they're kind of focused on this whole concept of, sort of like you're they're using kind of vehicles and cars as the theme because it's Daytona Beach, right?
Okay.
So my talk is using your nursing career as a vehicle for personal and professional transformation.
There you
So I'm going to
go.
talk about change and personal growth. So I like to talk about those sorts of topics.
Like
I've
professional development rather than
yeah,
the nursing. Yeah.
I've
And which I've
spoken
done too. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I speak more about like my sweet spots are more kind of like personal development. And back in the day, I did a lot of stuff on burnout recovery and things like
Hmm.
that. Leadership, um, communication,
I'm
kind
not
of,
laughing at you. I'm
yeah,
laughing because,
relationships.
yep, same thing. In the 90s, that's what I spoke on. I was a professional
Hmm.
speaker. I did CEU programs and had a business, Prosper Development Systems. The word prosper stood for professional staff personal development.
Hmm.
So we're very like-minded that way. And we
Hmm.
don't learn that in nursing school. We don't learn these
No.
topics, or I don't know if they do now, but we didn't then. It wasn't until my master's that I started thinking about change and personality assessment, Myers-Briggs and things like that. So
Hmm.
we are very like-minded that way, and I think that your topics are extremely important in this day and
Thank you.
age.
Yeah.
With podcasting, now that you're going to be on your 500th, do you
Mm.
ever get burned out or tired of one person after another, or does it incite excitement in you? And what does it? How does it transform you when you
Hmm.
podcast host with a
Yeah.
guest?
The best part of podcasting actually is the relational part because I'm a
Mm-hmm.
relational person. So the first, I don't know, 7,500 episodes of the show, I think were solo episodes, but I transitioned into interviews because it's just more interesting, and I feel like it's less boring for the audience to listen to me interview someone rather than just listen to me talk. So I did transition over to
I see.
interview format, and I've done at least 400 interviews now.
That's
Um,
amazing.
and any burnout from podcasting doesn't come from the conversational part. It's more the mechanics of it
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
can be more tiring, is, just all of the moving parts of
Hmm.
publishing a podcast. But the interview part's easy. That's the easy part. And wrangling guests is usually relatively easy,
Oh, sure. By now,
um,
everybody knows you. And thank
for
you,
the
by the
most
way,
part.
for having me. I guess it was a year or two ago.
I
And
think so.
we read some of my poetry and had a great discussion. I really enjoyed our discussion. And that's why I invited you. I said, he's got to be on our show here. Are there
Thank you.
any uh, final thoughts about the importance for nurses to have a creative outlet of some type?
Well, I mean, it depends on the person. Some people say that they're not creative. That's kind of hard to believe because I feel like we can pigeonhole the notion of creativity to like,
Mhm.
oh, I can draw or I can paint or I can do ceramics or something like that. And there's a lot of other ways to be creative.
Yeah.
Like my wife, for instance, she's an astrologer and a tarot reader, right? And a teacher. And she does have her bachelor's of fine arts. She was a painter and a sculptor, but
Mhm.
the work she does is highly, highly creative.
Mhm.
And she has
Mhm.
an incredibly creative mind, and I have a creative mind. So I feel like people need to expand the definition of what being creative means. Like it could mean being a gardener, right? Or
Absolutely.
you can be
Yes.
creative in your parenting, like raising young
Mm-hmm.
children.
Mm-hmm.
So, or you could be creative in terms of I don't know, creating a beautiful home. Um,
Hmm.
so I think we need to
Very
think a
good.
little more expansively of what creativity means, or maybe you're creative in terms of your friendships and your relationships, or maybe the way you care for your patients. So if people can be
Absolutely.
a
Yeah.
little looser
Mhm.
about what they think of as creativity, or maybe it's cooking, right?
Absolutely.
Um,
All of these make
yeah,
sense as creative arts, even
yeah,
exercise programs, dance, music.
could be anything.
But when you said relational, even you with your new marriage, I don't know how long you've known each other with your new wife,
Three
your
years.
3 years,
Yeah.
but that's created just new possibilities and new experiences than maybe your former self. You never know, right?
It's
So
absolutely, yeah.
the relationships matter as well in being creative. And on
Yeah.
that note, I want to thank you so much because you're just you're just different than most nurses I know. And you effortlessly communicate. And I just
Oh,
really
thank
value
you.
that a lot. And I look at this whole half hour has just flown by. We had no script.
Mhm.
We just freestyled. And I just want to have you back. When I'm at my 500th episode,
I'd be
we'll
more
see
than
how it all
happy
goes.
anytime.
And
Anytime.
we will put all of your links on. I have several of them here. And thank you so much, Nurse Keith, for being here on the Nursing and the Arts podcast.
Thanks for having me, Susan. It's an honor and privilege.
Thank you so much for listening to the Nursing and the Arts podcast. We loved having you here. And don't forget to sign up for our Facebook group, Nursing and the Arts, as well. And for information, you can email info@sjfcommunications.com.